You've spent years bending, adjusting, apologizing, just to keep the peace. You've silenced your voice, swallowed your truth, dimmed your light, because you were taught that being kind means being quiet, that being strong means enduring pain without complaint, that love means staying no matter the cost. But here's what that silence has cost you: your power, your peace, your self-trust. Every time you let someone cross a line and said nothing, every time you stayed in a conversation that drained you, every time you minimized your feelings to make someone else comfortable, you taught them that your boundaries don't matter. And worse, you taught yourself that you don't matter. But boundaries aren't selfish, they're sacred. They are the invisible lines that protect your energy, your time, your soul. Without them, you become a doormat for other people's moods, demands, and insecurities. And no amount of love or loyalty justifies that. Psychology confirms it. People with clear, consistent boundaries experience higher self-esteem, lower stress, and healthier relationships. Because boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about inviting respect in. They say, "This is how I will be treated. This is what I will no longer tolerate." And when you set them, not with anger, not with guilt, but with calm conviction, you begin to rebuild your self-worth from the inside out. But setting a boundary is only half the battle. The real test comes when it's crossed. That's when most people fail. They say no but then cave. They set a limit but make excuses when it's broken. And that sends a dangerous message: my word doesn't matter, my needs are negotiable. That's not kindness, that's self-betrayal. A boundary without enforcement is just a suggestion, and suggestions get ignored. So when someone shows up late for the third time after you've said it matters, leave. When they speak to you disrespectfully after you've asked them not to, end the conversation. When they demand your time but never show up for yours, stop giving it. Not with drama, not with blame, but with quiet, unshakable action. This isn't punishment, it's protection. It's you finally honoring the promise you made to yourself. And here's the beautiful truth. People don't hate boundaries, they respond to them. They may resist at first. They may call you cold, selfish, or dramatic. That's fear talking. Fear of losing control, fear of having to grow up. But if you stay steady, something shifts. They begin to treat you differently. Not because you've changed them, but because you've changed yourself. You've stopped being predictable. You've stopped being easy to manipulate. You've become someone who follows through. And that commands respect. Boundaries aren't about controlling others. They're about taking responsibility for your own life. They're about saying, "I will no longer sacrifice my peace to avoid discomfort." And that discomfort, the fear of conflict, the guilt of saying no, the ache of disappointing someone, is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're breaking a lifelong pattern of self-abandonment. That pain is not your enemy, it's your teacher. It's showing you where you've been betraying yourself. And every time you push through it, you grow stronger. You prove to yourself that you can handle the temporary sting of disapproval for the lasting reward of self-respect. You don't have to set 10 boundaries at once. Start with one clear line, one consistent action. Say, "I will not answer calls after 9 p.m., then don't. Say, "I will not stay in conversations where I'm mocked." Then walk away. Each time you honor your word, you build trust with yourself, and that trust becomes unshakable. You stop doubting, you stop second-guessing, you stop wondering if you're too much, because you know you are enough, and enough people deserve to be treated well. You'll notice that as you strengthen your boundaries, your relationships deepen or dissolve. That's how it should be. The right people will respect your limits. They'll admire your courage. They'll mirror your integrity. The wrong people will pull away. That's not loss, that's liberation. You're not losing love, you're making space for real love, the kind that doesn't demand you shrink, the kind that celebrates your strength, the kind that protects your peace as fiercely as you do. This is not a one-time fix. It's a daily practice, a lifelong commitment to yourself. And every time you choose clarity over compliance, courage over comfort, you reclaim another piece of your power. You are not here to please everyone. You are here to live with integrity, to stand in your truth, to protect what's sacred. And when you do, the world adjusts, not because you demanded it, but because you became someone it can't ignore. You've set your boundaries. You've stopped chasing approval. You've begun to reclaim your power. But what happens in that split second when someone crosses the line? When they speak down to you, ignore your needs, or dismiss your truth? That moment defines everything. Because in that instant, you face a choice. Will you react from pain or respond from power? Most people react. They snap. They shut down. They defend, justify, or explode. Because disrespect triggers something deep, something primal. It feels like an attack on your very existence. And in that flash of emotion, your nervous system takes over. Your heart races. Your breath shortens. Your mind floods with fear. Fear of being seen as weak, fear of being abandoned, fear of conflict. But reacting only gives them control. It hands them the power to dictate your state, your energy, your peace. And that's not living. That's surviving. The real strength, the kind that transforms lives, comes not from instinct, but from intention. Responding, not reacting, is the mark of someone who refuses to be shaken. It's the calm after the storm. It's the deep breath before the words. It's choosing how you show up, not based on what they did, but based on who you are. Neuroscience confirms this. When you pause before responding, you activate the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for clarity, control, and wisdom. You shift from survival mode to self-mastery, and in that space, you reclaim your power. So the next time someone disrespects you, don't answer immediately. Breathe. Let the wave of emotion rise and pass. Then ask yourself one question. What kind of person do I want to be in this moment? Not what will make them regret it, not what will win the argument, but what aligns with your values, your dignity, your truth. Then speak from there, calm, clear, unmoved. Say, I won't be spoken to that way. Say, that's not acceptable. Say it without anger, without apology, without hesitation. Your tone matters more than your words. A steady voice, a firm posture, a quiet presence. These are the signals of someone who cannot be broken. And people respond to that, not because they suddenly become kinder, but because they recognize strength when they see it. They may not admit it. They may even push back. But deep down they know, this person cannot be manipulated. This person won't be small. And that changes the entire dynamic. Responding with power doesn't mean you have to confront every slight. Sometimes the most powerful response is silence, a slow nod, a quiet walk away. Letting your actions speak louder than words ever could. Because when you refuse to engage in chaos, you rise above it. You stop feeding the drama. You stop giving energy to what drains you. And in that stillness, you become untouchable. Not because you're cold, but because you're centered. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much about your peace to lose it over someone else's immaturity. This is not suppression. This is mastery. It's the ability to feel the fire inside and still choose peace. It's knowing that your worth isn't on trial, so you don't need to defend it. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to win. You just have to remain true. And when you do, something shifts, not just in you but in the space around you. The energy changes, the balance tips. You're no longer the victim of their behavior. You're the architect of your response, and that's where freedom lives. You'll notice that when you respond with calm authority, people begin to treat you differently. They hesitate before speaking. They think twice before crossing a line. Not because you've punished them, but because you've shown them the standard. And standards are not enforced through yelling. They're enforced through consistency. One clear response, then another, then another. Until it becomes undeniable, you are not someone to be taken for granted. You are not someone who will shrink. You are someone who stands, quietly, firmly, completely, on your own ground. And no amount of noise can move you. This is the path of the unshakable, not the loud, not the aggressive, not the confrontational, but the calm, the clear, the consistent. This is how you protect your soul without losing your kindness. This is how you defend your peace without starting a war. You don't have to change the world. You just have to change how you move through it. One response at a time, one breath at a time, one choice at a time. And in that quiet, relentless commitment to yourself, you become someone others can't help but respect, even if they never say it out loud. You've learned to respond with calm. You've set your boundaries. You've stopped chasing approval. But none of it will last unless you build it on the right foundation, your self-worth. Because no external strategy can protect you if deep down you still believe you don't deserve better. That's the hidden truth no one talks about. People treat you exactly how you allow them to, and you allow them to because, somewhere inside, you've accepted that this is all you're entitled to. That love means suffering, that respect must be earned through endless sacrifice, that being seen means being small. But that belief was never yours. It was given to you, by past wounds, by careless words, by people who couldn't love you well. And you internalized it. You made it your truth. But it's time to dismantle that lie, brick by brick, because self-worth isn't something you find in the world. It's something you build within. Every time you say no when you mean no, you strengthen it. Every time you walk away from disrespect, you reinforce it. Every time you choose your peace over someone else's comfort, you prove it. This isn't vanity. This isn't arrogance. This is survival. This is the quiet rebellion of someone who refuses to keep betraying themselves for the sake of false harmony. Because here's what happens when your self-worth is low. You tolerate what you should reject. You stay when you should leave. You apologize when you should stand firm. You silence your voice because you're afraid of being too much, when the real tragedy is being too little for yourself. But when your self-worth is strong, something shifts. You stop questioning whether you deserve respect. You just know it. You don't debate whether a relationship is toxic. You feel it in your body. You don't beg for attention. You redirect your energy to where it's valued. That's not ego. That's alignment. Psychology shows that people with high self-worth don't attract more love or success because they're luckier. They do because they behave differently. They set clearer boundaries. They walk away faster. They expect more. And the world, in turn, gives them more. Not because the world changed, but because they did. So start building that foundation now. Not tomorrow. Not when you lose weight or get promoted. Now. Look in the mirror and say 3 things you respect about yourself. Not what you've achieved, not what you look like, but who you are. Your courage, your loyalty, your resilience. Say them out loud. Write them down. Repeat them every morning like a sacred vow. Because you are not waiting to become worthy. You already are. And every time you act from that truth, you rewire your brain to believe it. You begin to treat yourself like someone you're responsible for protecting. You stop overworking to prove your value. You stop staying in conversations that drain you. You stop making excuses for people who hurt you. Instead, you ask, does this align with how I see myself? If not, you correct it, not with anger, not with guilt, but with quiet authority. You don't need permission. You don't need validation. You don't need someone else's apology to begin living like you matter. Because you do. And the more you live that truth, the more others reflect it back. Not everyone will. Some will resist. Some will try to pull you back into old patterns, into old roles, into old pain. But you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to justify your growth. You just have to keep choosing you, over and over. Even when it's hard, even when it's lonely, even when doubt whispers that you're not enough. That whisper is not truth, it's fear. And fear loses power the moment you stop feeding it. So feed your courage instead. Feed your integrity. Feed the part of you that knows, deep in your bones, that you were not born to be mistreated. You were born to stand tall, to speak your truth, to protect your peace, to live with fire in your heart and calm in your soul. And when you do, disrespect doesn't disappear, but it loses its grip. It no longer defines you. It no longer controls you. Because you've built something unshakable, a self that refuses to be small. And from that place, no one can ever take your power again. You've strengthened your boundaries. You've mastered your responses. You've rebuilt your self-worth from the ground up. But there's one force that can quietly undo it all. Your environment. The people you allow close to you shape your thoughts, your energy, your sense of what's normal. If you're surrounded by those who belittle your dreams, mock your sensitivity, or dismiss your boundaries, no amount of inner work will feel solid. Because proximity is power. The air you breathe in your closest relationships either fuels your growth or suffocates it. And if you keep investing in people who don't respect you, you're not being loyal. You're being complicit in your own diminishment. It's time to look honestly at your circle, not with judgment, not with blame, but with clarity. Who lifts you when you speak your truth? Who celebrates your growth instead of resisting it? Who listens without interrupting, supports without conditions, loves without manipulation? Those are your people. Hold them close. But also ask, who drains you? Who makes you feel small just by being near them? Who demands your energy but offers nothing in return? Who punishes you for setting boundaries with silence, guilt, or passive aggression? These are not relationships. They are emotional taxes. And the cost is your peace, your confidence, your very sense of self. You don't have to cut everyone off, but you must protect your space. You must choose where you place your time, your attention, your heart. Because you are not responsible for fixing everyone. You are responsible for honoring yourself. And sometimes, The most powerful act of self-respect is creating distance, emotional, physical, or permanent, from those who refuse to meet you with dignity. This isn't about being unkind, it's about being wise. It's about understanding that you cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot grow in poisoned soil. Some people will never respect you, not because you've done something wrong, but because their own insecurity depends on you staying small. They need you to apologize. They need you to chase. They need you to doubt. Because your strength threatens their fragility. And as long as you stay within their orbit, you'll keep shrinking to fit their limited view of you. But you were never meant to fit. You were meant to expand, to rise, to take up space without asking permission. So begin to shift your energy. Reduce contact with those who drain you. Don't argue, don't explain, just withdraw, spend less time, share less of yourself. Redirect your presence to those who reflect the person you're becoming. Seek out people who speak with kindness, act with integrity, and honor their word. Be around those who don't require you to perform, to prove, to pretend. These are the ones who will see you, truly see you, and honor what they see. And if you can't find them yet, become that person for yourself. Lead by example. Show up with consistency, speak with truth, act with courage. And slowly, the right people will be drawn to your energy like light to warmth. This isn't selfish. It's survival. Research shows that cutting ties with toxic relationships leads to dramatic improvements in mental clarity, emotional stability, and overall life satisfaction. But the real reward isn't just feeling better, it's becoming stronger. When you surround yourself with mutual respect, you stop questioning your worth. You stop doubting your boundaries. You stop apologizing for existing. You begin to live from a place of abundance, not lack. And from that place, disrespect doesn't just fade, it becomes unrecognizable. Because you've raised your standards too high for it to survive. You no longer tolerate what you once accepted. You no longer make excuses for behavior you now know is unacceptable. You don't need to announce your transformation. It radiates from you, in your posture, in your tone, in your silence. People notice. Not because you've changed for them, but because you've changed for you. And that kind of change is magnetic. It draws in those who are ready to meet you at your level. It repels those who aren't. And that's not loss, that's alignment. You are not abandoning love. You are making space for real love, the kind that doesn't demand you betray yourself, the kind that grows in truth, not fear, the kind that protects your soul as fiercely as you do. So protect your circle like your life depends on it, because your peace does. You don't owe anyone access to your heart if they've shown they can't be trusted with it. You don't have to suffer for the sake of a title, friend, family, partner. If the reality is disrespect, choose yourself, again and again, until it becomes second nature, until your presence alone commands the respect you've always deserved. There is a power in silence most people never discover. Not the silence of submission, the kind that comes from fear, from being too afraid to speak up, but the silence of strength, the kind that comes after you've set your boundary, after you've spoken your truth, after you've chosen yourself. And then, when chaos erupts, you don't rise to meet it. You stay grounded. You don't explain. You don't defend. You don't beg for understanding. You simply withdraw your energy and remain calm. That stillness, deeper than words, stronger than argument, is where true authority lives. Because in that moment, you are no longer reacting to their noise. You are operating from a place so solid, so centered, that their disrespect cannot touch you, and that terrifies people who rely on drama, guilt, or manipulation to control others. They expect you to fight, to cry, to justify, but when you don't, you disrupt their script, you take away their power, and in that quiet, you become untouchable. This isn't passivity, it's mastery. It's the emotional equivalent of standing firm in a storm while everything around you is being torn apart. Your silence says more than any words ever could. I am not yours to rattle. I am not here to entertain your ego. I am not afraid of your disapproval. And that kind of presence, calm, unshaken, unimpressed, commands respect, even from those who refuse to give it freely. Psychology confirms that nonverbal communication carries more weight than words. Your posture, your eye contact, the pace of your breath, they signal your internal state louder than any argument. When you remain composed while someone tries to provoke you, you send an unspoken message. I am in control, not you. And people respond to that, not always immediately, not always with kindness. But over time, they adjust. They hesitate before testing you. They think twice before crossing a line, because they've learned something vital. You don't play their game. You don't reward bad behavior with attention. You don't feed the fire just to prove a point. You've removed yourself from the cycle of reaction and response. And in that space, you've reclaimed your power. This kind of silence isn't cold. It's not cruel. It's not about punishing anyone. It's about protecting your inner peace. It's about refusing to let someone else's lack of maturity dictate your emotional state. You feel the sting. You feel the anger. You feel the urge to fight back, but you don't act on it. You breathe through it. You let it pass. And in that pause, you choose dignity over drama. You choose long-term peace over short-term satisfaction. That is courage, real courage, the kind that doesn't roar but whispers. I will not be broken. I will not be small. I will not lose myself for the sake of someone else's comfort. And when you live like this, calm, consistent, unshakable, people begin to treat you differently. Not because you've demanded it, not because you've threatened, but because you've embodied it. You've become someone who cannot be disrespected without consequence, not because you retaliate, but because your presence alone makes disrespect feel unnatural, like trying to shout in a sacred space. It just doesn't belong. You don't need to prove your worth. You don't need to remind them of your boundaries. You don't need to re-explain what you've already said. You just need to live in alignment with your truth. And when someone violates it, you don't escalate. You don't beg. You don't chase. You simply disengage. You walk away. You end the conversation. You stop answering calls. You protect your energy without apology. And in that quiet withdrawal, you teach the most powerful lesson of all. My peace is non-negotiable. My time is valuable. My soul is not open for negotiation. That is how you command respect. Not through force, not through fear, but through consistency, through presence, through the unshakable decision to no longer participate in your own diminishment. This is the final stage of transformation, not just setting boundaries, but living them so deeply that you don't even need to speak them. Your silence becomes your strength, your calm becomes your power, and in that stillness, you become someone the world cannot ignore, because you've stopped trying to be seen and started becoming real. You've learned to stand in your power. You've mastered your silence. You've protected your peace with boundaries, clarity, and unwavering self-worth. But there's one truth you must face. Not everyone will respect you, no matter what you do. No matter how clear your boundaries, how calm your responses, how strong your presence. Some people are not capable of treating you well, not because you failed, not because you weren't kind enough, patient enough, or loving enough, but because their inner world is too broken to allow them to honor someone whole. And that is not your burden to carry. The deepest illusion you've been sold is that if you just try harder, explain better, or love longer, they will finally see your worth. But respect cannot be earned from those who lack the emotional capacity to give it. It's like asking a blind man to describe the sun. No matter how brightly it shines, he cannot see it, and no amount of pleading will change that. So the real question is not how to make them respect you, but how to stop letting their inability define your value. Because every minute you spend trying to convince someone to see you is a minute stolen from the life you were meant to live. Every ounce of energy you pour into a relationship that only takes is a theft from your own growth. And the cost is not just emotional, it's existential. You begin to forget who you are. You shape yourself around their limitations. You silence your voice to keep the illusion of connection alive. But connection built on self-betrayal is not love. It's captivity. And you were not born to be held hostage by someone else's emotional poverty. So it's time to confront the hardest truth of all. Some people will never change. Not because you didn't fight hard enough. Not because you gave up too soon. But because change requires willingness, and they are not willing. They are comfortable in the chaos. They are served by your silence. They benefit from your compliance. And as long as you keep showing up, hoping, explaining, forgiving, they have no reason to grow. So the most powerful thing you can do is stop participating, not with anger, not with revenge, but with quiet, unshakable resolve. Remove your presence. Withdraw your energy. Cease the explanations. Stop the chasing. Let your absence speak louder than your words ever could. This is not surrender. This is sovereignty. It's the moment you stop begging for dignity and start living it. And when you do, something profound happens. You reclaim your time, your focus, your future. You stop waiting for apologies that will never come. You stop replaying conversations that will never be fair. You stop measuring your worth by their inability to see it. And in that release you find freedom. Not the loud, dramatic kind, but the deep, quiet kind that settles in your bones and whispers, I am safe. I am free. I am mine. This is not about cutting people out of your life with fury. It's about choosing yourself with peace. It's about realizing that love does not require self-destruction, that loyalty does not mean endless suffering, that maturity means knowing when to walk away, not in anger, but in clarity. And when you walk away from those who refuse to respect you, you are not running. You are arriving at the life you've always deserved, one built on mutual care, honesty, and dignity. You begin to attract relationships that reflect your standards because you've finally set them. You stop making excuses for bad behavior because you've stopped tolerating it in yourself. You no longer confuse intensity with intimacy, chaos with passion, control with love. You know the difference now. And that knowledge is your armor. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need their recognition to feel whole. You've stopped seeking validation in the wrong places. You've brought it home, to the one person who matters most, you. And from that place, no loss feels like defeat. No silence feels like rejection, because you are no longer defined by who stays or who leaves. You are defined by who you choose to be, every single day. Calm, clear, unshaken, whole. And when you live like that, the right people find you, not because you called them, but because your energy calls them. And the wrong ones fade, not because you push them away, but because they can no longer survive in the light you now carry. This is not the end of your journey. It's the beginning of your real life, the one where you are finally free. You've walked away from what drains you. You've protected your energy, your boundaries, your silence. You've stopped begging for respect from those who cannot give it. And in that release, something deeper begins to emerge, not just peace, but purpose. Because the moment you stop fighting to be seen by the wrong people, you finally see yourself, and that changes everything. You begin to notice the quiet moments, the ones where you're not defending, just being, where you're not reacting, just breathing, where you're not trying to prove your worth, but simply living it. That's when you realize respect isn't something you earn from others. It's something you build within, then reflect outward. And when you do, it becomes impossible for others to treat you poorly without feeling the friction of their own misalignment. You are no longer a mirror for their chaos. You are a standard they must rise to meet. And if they can't, they simply fall out of your life, not with drama, but with silence. That's the power of living with integrity, not perfection, not control, but consistency. Every time you honor your word, every time you keep a promise to yourself, every time you choose peace over conflict and truth over approval, you strengthen the foundation of who you are. And from that foundation, a new life begins to rise, one not built on the shaky ground of other people's opinions, but on the solid rock of self-trust. You no longer tolerate disrespect because you've stopped believing it's normal. You no longer confuse intensity with love or silence with peace. You know the difference now. You feel it in your body. When someone speaks down to you, you don't freeze, you disengage. When they try to guilt you into compliance, you don't crumble. You smile and walk away, not with anger, not with pride, but with the quiet certainty of someone who knows their value and refuses to negotiate it. This isn't arrogance, it's awareness. And awareness is the most powerful force in human transformation. Because once you see clearly, you can't unsee. Once you know your worth, you can't unknow it. And once you've tasted the freedom of living without apology, you'll never settle for less again. You begin to attract relationships that match your energy. People who listen, who care, who show up. Not because you demanded it, but because you became someone worthy of it. And you treat them the same way, with respect, with honesty, with depth. Because real connection isn't built on need, it's built on mutual honor. It's not about filling a void, it's about sharing fullness. And when you live from that place, you stop attracting takers. You start attracting givers. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You've become a signal in the noise, a calm in the chaos, a truth in a world of pretense. And that kind of presence doesn't shout, it radiates. It draws in those who are ready. It repels those who aren't. And you stop fearing that repulsion. Because you finally understand, losing someone who never truly saw you isn't loss. It's liberation. You're not losing love. You're making space for real love. The kind that doesn't demand you shrink, the kind that celebrates your strength, the kind that protects your peace as fiercely as you do. And in that space, you begin to live. Not just survive, not just endure, but truly live, with fire in your chest and stillness in your soul. You speak your truth without fear. You set your boundaries without guilt. You walk away without looking back. Not because you're heartless, but because you're whole. And when you are whole, you don't need to take from others to feel complete. You give from overflow. You love from strength. You lead with courage. This is not the end of your journey. It's the moment it finally becomes yours. No more bending, no more breaking, no more betraying yourself for the illusion of connection. You are here, now, fully, unapologetically. And from this moment forward, you move through the world not as someone seeking permission, but as someone who has already granted it, to yourself. That is the highest form of respect, and it starts now. With this breath, with this choice, with this unshakable decision to live as the person you were always meant to be. You've built the foundation. You've walked away from what doesn't serve you. You've learned to respond with calm, to speak with truth, to live with integrity. But there's one final truth that seals your transformation. Respect is not something you fight for, it's something you become. It doesn't come from demanding, pleading, or proving. It comes from embodying a standard so clear, so consistent, that disrespect simply cannot survive in your presence. And that standard begins with one unshakable belief. You are worthy of respect, exactly as you are. Not when you're thinner, not when you're richer, not when you've achieved more, not when they finally apologize, not when they finally see you. Now, this moment, this breath, you are worthy because you exist, because you feel, because you try, because you keep going, even when it hurts. And the moment you stop making respect conditional on someone else's behavior, you reclaim your power completely. Because you're no longer waiting, you're no longer hoping, you're no longer bargaining with your dignity. You're living as if you already know your worth, because you do. And that changes how you move through the world. You don't enter a room scanning for approval. You enter it knowing you belong. You don't twist your words to avoid conflict. You speak them clearly, kindly, firmly. You don't shrink to make others comfortable. You stand, not to challenge them, but to honor yourself. And when someone disrespects you, you don't collapse into doubt. You don't spiral into fear. You simply respond, calmly, clearly, without drama. Because your self-worth is no longer tied to their actions. You've decoupled your peace from their behavior, and that is freedom, real freedom, not the kind that comes from winning arguments or getting apologies. The kind that comes from knowing, deep in your bones, that no one can take your dignity unless you hand it over, and you've stopped handing it over. You've stopped giving your power away in silence, in hesitation, in the hope that if you just love enough, they'll finally treat you right. But love without boundaries is not love, it's self-abandonment, and you are done abandoning yourself. So now, you lead with quiet confidence, not arrogance, not aggression, but the deep, unshakable knowing that you are enough, that your presence matters, that your time is valuable, that your feelings are valid. And when you live from that truth, people respond differently, not because you've changed them, but because you've changed the energy you bring into every interaction. You are no longer reactive. You are no longer desperate. You are not seeking anything from them. You are simply being who you are, and that is the most powerful force in human connection. People don't respect perfection. They respect authenticity. They respect courage. They respect someone who doesn't flinch when challenged, who doesn't beg for loyalty, who doesn't punish with guilt or fear. They respect someone who can walk away with peace. Someone who sets a boundary and keeps it. Someone who speaks softly but means every word. That is the kind of person you've become. And you didn't get here by luck. You got here by choice. Hundreds of small, painful, courageous choices. Choosing yourself when it was easier to please. Walking away when it was harder than staying. Speaking up when silence felt safer. And every one of those choices built the unshakable core you now stand on. You are not the same person who started this journey. You are stronger, clearer, freer, and the world reflects that back to you. Not perfectly, not always, but increasingly. The right people stay. The wrong ones fade. Opportunities appear. Peace deepens. Joy returns. Not because life became easier, but because you became stronger. And now, you don't just handle disrespect, you rise above it. You don't just survive the people who don't respect you, you outgrow them. And in that outgrowing, you discover the most powerful truth of all. Your life is not defined by how others treat you. It's defined by how you treat yourself. And from this moment forward, you choose to treat yourself like someone who deserves peace, like someone who deserves love, like someone who deserves respect, not tomorrow, not when everything changes, but today, right now. And that choice, more than any boundary, any response, any silence, is what transforms your life forever. You've arrived at the quiet center of your power, not with a shout, not with a victory, but with a deep, unshakable knowing. You are no longer waiting for permission to be free. You don't need their apology. You don't need their recognition. You don't need them to finally understand you, because you already do. You understand your worth. You understand your strength. You understand that peace is not something you find in the right relationship or the perfect job or the ideal moment. It's something you carry within, something you choose, moment by moment, breath by breath. And that choice, to honor yourself, to protect your energy, to live with integrity, is the most radical act of courage in a world that rewards silence, compliance, and self-sacrifice. You've learned that respect is not a gift others give you, it's a state you embody. And when you live from that state, you stop attracting those who would diminish you. Not because you push them away with force, but because your presence becomes too bright for shadows to linger. You've stopped explaining yourself to people who've shown they won't listen. You've stopped justifying your boundaries to those who only want to cross them. You've stopped shrinking your truth to fit into conversations that were never meant to hold you. And in that release, you've found something rare, inner alignment. The space between who you are and how you live has closed. You no longer say one thing and do another. You no longer tolerate what you claim to reject. You act in truth, not fear. You respond in clarity, not reaction. And that consistency, quiet, steady, unwavering, is what transforms your life. Because people don't follow words. They follow energy. They follow presence. They follow the person who doesn't waver when challenged, who doesn't beg for loyalty, who doesn't punish with silence or guilt. They follow the one who walks away with dignity, who speaks with calm, who loves without losing themselves. That is the kind of person you've become. And you didn't get here by chance. You got here by refusing to betray yourself one more time. By choosing your peace over their comfort. By saying no when it would have been easier to say yes. By walking out when staying felt like survival. Each of those choices was a brick in the foundation of your self-respect. And now, that foundation is unbreakable. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to defend your worth. You don't need to earn love through endless effort. You simply live as if you already know you are enough, because you do. And that changes everything. You begin to attract what matches your energy, not because you're trying to manifest it, but because you become it. You draw in relationships built on mutual care, not control. You find work that honors your values, not exploits your drive. You create space for joy, not just endurance. And when disrespect shows up, as it still might, you don't collapse. You don't spiral. You don't question your worth. You simply respond with the same quiet authority you've cultivated, a firm boundary, a calm voice, a peaceful disengagement. You've stopped seeing disrespect as a personal attack. You see it now for what it is, a reflection of someone else's inner chaos. And you no longer take responsibility for fixing it. You are not here to heal everyone who hurts you. You are here to protect your soul, to live with courage, to honor the life you were given, and in that sacred commitment to yourself, you become a beacon, not because you're perfect, but because you're real, because you've stopped pretending, because you've chosen truth over approval, peace over drama, self-respect over survival. And that kind of authenticity is rare. It's magnetic. It inspires others, sometimes silently, sometimes years later, to do the same. You may never know the full impact of your transformation, but it's real, it's spreading, it's changing lives, starting with your own. So keep going, not because it's easy, but because it matters. Because every time you choose yourself, you reclaim another piece of your power. Every time you walk away with peace, you prove that you are no longer trapped. Every time you speak your truth without apology, you give someone else permission to do the same. This is not the end of your journey. It's the moment you realize you were never broken. You were just buried beneath layers of compromise, fear, and misplaced loyalty. And now, you've unearthed yourself, whole, strong, free. And from this moment forward, you move through the world not as a victim of other people's behavior, but as the author of your own life. That is your power, That is your truth. And no one, not one person, can ever take it from you again. You've done the work. You've faced the silence, set the boundaries, walked away from what no longer serves you. You've stopped begging for respect and started embodying it. And now, in the stillness that follows transformation, you begin to feel something you may have forgotten exists: peace. Not the kind that comes after everything is fixed, not the kind that depends on external validation or perfect circumstances, but the deep, quiet peace of knowing you are finally on your own side, that you are no longer at war with yourself.